Hi Tara, thank you so much for being on Parenting Unplugged. It means the world to me to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Great. So, let's not talk about Tara the leader, Tara the entrepreneur, Tara the philanthropist. Let's talk about Tara the person to start. So, let's jog your memory back a few years and tell me, how was school life for you? How was college life for you? Something that just jumps out of your memory bank.
Yeah. Interestingly, when I look back at my school life, I realized I didn't enjoy it much at all.
Really?
And from the outside, you would never expect it because I always seemed to have a lot of friends. I was very active. I had great relationships with my educators, faculty. But I really didn't enjoy my school life till I went to boarding school in England for my A levels. And I think the shift for me and why I look back with fond memories then is because I finally felt seen in that education environment. I was older, more independent, and I think that ecosystem just made me feel more respected. So that is actually the thing that jumps out at me is that I didn't enjoy most of my school life. And then university I actually loved very much because while I was in Singapore, which was a very different decision than most of my peer group, it was wonderful to be close to home, but yet in an international environment that gave me access to thought, to faculty, to an ecosystem that felt very versatile, yet 4.5 hours away from home, in a place that also felt very much like home.
Let's think about one fun experience you had at A levels and one big learning moment in your university.
Sure. So I think fun experience at A levels was actually my peer group being able to drive. At 16 in the UK, you get your learner's license. You can also have a glass of wine with an adult. Neither of those two things felt natural for me coming from a conservative life in Delhi. And while my parents were very progressive in their mindset, in our habits, in our structure at home, and what we were allowed to do, there was still a fair amount of conservatism. So, to be with a bunch of girls who would go home on the weekend and drive, or be able to take me on the weekend to the cinema, was always this feeling of real independence that I loved. And learning moment in my university life was actually when I had to choose what I wanted to study. It was a liberal arts program. My father had always said to us that, look, whatever you all want to study, I have two siblings as well, please feel free to study. Just don't study business administration. And he'd always said that to us leading up to university. But when the time came to actually decide what to do, I chose a liberal arts degree because I loved the landscape of knowledge that it gave me. And when that hypothesis came true, I realized that actually having exposure to multiple subjects and multiple schools of thought was a big learning experience for me. And I think that has helped me even 20 years later in the work that I do.
What was it about the liberal arts degree that drew you to it? Was it the expanse of the curriculum? Was it the ability to study different bits of different things? Or was it that you were naturally curious to explore something that you had not done before?
I think I always, from a subject point of view, really enjoyed literature, history, philosophy. I really enjoyed those subjects. So even my A levels were a little bit curated around it. I did 4 A levels, two, one in math and economics, and the other in history and English. So complete in a way, polar opposites. But I did well in all of it, but I always enjoyed the liberal arts way of thinking. Two, I loved the cookie buffet approach.
Right.
Because at 17 and a half or 18, I wasn't one of those people who had woken up at the age of 8, 9, and 10 and said, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer. That wasn't my personality. So having the variety to say, let's enjoy the content rather than use this as a means to an end, the liberal arts degree gave me. And what was wonderful about my university in Singapore was that of every semester modules, almost 50% of the faculty were visiting faculty. And
Right.
that was special to the liberal arts degree.
Right.
So you were sitting in, like I said, in the comforts of Singapore, but having access to faculty from the best schools around the world. So it all just worked very nicely for me in that respect.
So, Tara, you're involved in education missions, I'll call them, of a varied nature. So there is Learning Matters, which is preschool. There is Teach for India, which is a social governed thing. There is your home office foundation that runs the education initiative. Tell me a little bit, or tell everyone watching this, a little bit about all the initiatives you're involved in. And what about education draws you to do so much in the field of education?
I stumbled upon this space again. Um,
I love the honesty of that answer.
I really did. I wish I could say that again. I can say for my daughter, who's now 7, every day she repeats how she wants to be a teacher and how she wants her own school. She's actually designed it, she's taken notes. Now, whether it'll last or not is different. But I wasn't one of those. I didn't have any deep rooted desire to be in this space. And I think, like a lot of things in my life, stars aligned and clarity emerged, and opportunities emerged that gave me that clarity. So in 2019, my elder daughter Veda was a year and a half old. And I actually started looking at what the school ecosystem looks like in Delhi. Because,
Right.
it had been a long time since I had studied in that. And friends of mine it was one conversation we were having. And Sonia Phillips, the founder of Learning Matters, was a family friend. And so I reached out to her, went and had a coffee and said, what does school look like? What age do you start? What do you do, etc.? And what was a 1 hour coffee became a 4 hour conversation about the ideology of education and the understanding of individuality in children, and how the early years from 0 to 10 are the most fundamental years in a human being's life. Those conversations led to many others, and I said to Sonia one day, how can I support you? And fast forward 5 years, we now have 3 preschools in Delhi with the dream to even do something very specific from an elementary school point of
Correct.
view. Exactly at that same time, I changed a little bit of my role in my main business, which is senior care. And the world of philanthropy opened up to me. We were completely rechristening the foundation. I took a call to say, I think the way what we've done in the foundation could be done differently. And I spent a year studying philanthropy and the social sector, multiple elements of the social sector.
Right.
And there was just this quiet conviction that was slowly building in that in the philanthropy space, if there was anything I would like to do, it would be in the education world. And just around then, Anu Aga, who was the former chair of Teach for India, said, look, we need to set up a Delhi board for Teach for India. Can you champion this for us? And one thing I think I know how to do well is create sense out of chaos. So I said, sure, I'm willing to take this on. At that point, not really feeling the love I have for Teach for India or the education sector I have today. It was just a challenge accepted.
It was a project you took on.
Exactly. But that opened my eyes to the social sector and the educational social sector in India. And then I haven't turned back from there. And at that point, I then pivoted the foundation to become a grant giving organization to entities that focus on foundational learning and literacy, which we've now over the last 5 years also expanded it to capacity building in the education sector. And so it all just came about together. Learning Matters, Teach for India, pivoting the foundation. And I've just used the last 4 or 5 years to really deeply study this space and the impact potentially we can make, and therefore what it does for the country and nation building.
I so resonate with this. When I went through the college application process with my daughter, I realized that everyone jumps into it so late, and then the kids are pushed against a wall. We're running against the clock. The activities become meaningless. The children are not really learning anything from what they're doing in their supposed activities, and which led to the birth of Head Start mentorship for me. So I resonate so much with you when you say that you actually start looking for something personally, and then it sort of snowballs into a larger cause, and then you take it in whichever direction it is meant to go in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell me something. I also know that you're a very passionate, committed mother. Let's talk a little bit about your parenting style. How would you classify yourself as a parent? Are you completely hands off? Are you over involved? There are a lot of terms thrown about these days, but let's not get into the cliches of the terms. But if I were to ask you, what kind of a parent are you, Tara? What would your answer be?
I think I'm a very trusting, respectful, and structured parent. And it comes with its pros and cons. So there's no sense of it being better than any other way of parenting. I think this works for me. And in my journey, I have realized, as I'm sure many other parents have realized, that parenting can bring the best and the worst out of you. And the fact is, it's so important, therefore, to have awareness of who you are as a parent and who you are becoming as an individual through the parenting journey, that I think that's been my biggest North Star. Is self-reflection of who I am as a human being, what works for me, and therefore how that impacts my parenting style. Because I can't be a different version of myself and then expect to be a different version of the parent that I am. I think it is too interlinked. So trusting, respectful, and structured. Structure because it makes I feel sane. I, as a working mother with multiple hats, as a lot of us have, structure gives me that semblance of being able to do multiple things.
Yes.
And my children have taken after that and enjoy structure. And so far, don't push me back. Once they hit teenagers, I don't know what will happen. Respectful because I really think that they are as aware and intelligent and conscious as we are as adults. They're just in smaller people's bodies. And trusting because I trust the world around us and the village I have created to help me bring up my children. It is not a lone ranger's game. I'm very fortunate to have a village. And you can only have a village if you trust the village and if the village can trust you. So between family, friends, all the bhaiyas and didis, and the larger ecosystem of their educational landscape, I surrender to that trust very much. And my children and I really enjoy getting to know each other. So I don't baby them, I protect them because they're not yet capable of protecting themselves. But they are so bright and so intelligent that I often use this anecdote that when Avya, my younger one, was born, it was in COVID. And one of the things I was missing a lot was going away on my spiritual retreats with my various gurus. Because, you don't like physical separation from your children. And I remember talking to a friend and having both my babies in the room next door and saying, I'm missing spending time with my gurus. And I had this like thunderbolt where I said, wait a minute, my gurus are in the adjacent room. My children are here to teach me everything I think I need to learn about life and myself. So when that lens changed, my parenting style evolved therefore from that.
I'm going to pick on something that you just said, and which I was not sort of thinking about when I was thinking of this conversation in my mind. You said that you have to find your own self to be a good parent. I think that's something to catch on. Let's discuss that a little more. In today's frenzied life, people are literally on the treadmill 24/7. Because there's so much going on, I feel parenting has also become one of the jobs on the checklist rather than something that you immerse yourself in, right? How important is it to find yourself? How important is it to kind of identify who you are, what your philosophy is, so that, and I'm only talking about this in the context of parenting for now, so that that can set the pattern for your parenting?
It's interesting. I don't know when parenting became a verb. We are parents because that's a role we play. We don't say we're daughtering or we're sistering, right? Or we're wifing. I mean, those roles aren't verbs. So I don't know when this role became a project and when it became something outside of who we are as intrinsic human beings. And I think that's always been a bit of a rub for me. I don't think that means you are any less involved or passionate or committed to your children, but you are also committed and passionate to the other roles that you play. And at different stages of your life, that intensity has to vary. But you cannot play any of those roles if you are not cognizant of, like I said, your own value system, which keeps evolving.
Of
Your
course.
value system and the priorities around that value system keep evolving. But I think children look towards you as parents for a sense of assurance, a sense of clarity, a sense of guidance. And how are you to provide that to them if you yourself haven't quite figured out what matters to you and what means something to you? Eventually, they will have their own set of value systems. And you, as a family unit, will have to find a balance between each of what matters to you. But in the early years, they are looking up at you for that. So your consciousness, your awareness, your self-reflection has to play a part in how you are a parent rather than your active parenting, which I think there's a difference.
And one thing I'm seeing, Tara, parents are so afraid of being parents. And I often say to them, your job is not to keep your child happy and entertained at all times. Your job is also to put in the guide rails. Your job is also to discipline. Your job is also to set the rules at some time.
Yeah,
So today's generation of parents is actually very afraid to parent.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think we are meant to be, it would be wonderful to have a open, friendly equation with your children, but they will have enough friends. They are looking up at you as their as the people with the resources and the tools to build the boat for them to then send them out to sea. You're not going to be on the boat sailing with them for the rest of your life, so you are not their friends in that sense. But they always know you come back to shore and you'll find your parents then. I think there's a one of my favorite things whenever one feels lost is a poem by Khalil Gibran in The Prophet on children. I mean, I would say to everybody watching this to just Google it and read it. It's sort of like the code of conduct, and it's true 100 years
Your
later as
children are
well.
not your children.
Absolutely.
Yes,
So I think that's very wise words to live by.
that's true. That's true. So tell me, as a parent, three things you struggle with in your regular day to day parenting.
I think right now my girls are at that age where it almost feels too perfect. And I've been sort of asking friends who have older kids, where does the shoe drop? Because the little struggles of adjusting in school, or the little struggles of them finding their voice and me learning, therefore, to step back and listen, don't really feel like struggles. They just all feel like learning moments. So I'm not trying to sound all, the things are perfect, but I don't right now at this stage think of it as a struggle. And as a working mom, I thought I would struggle with the whole concept of spending time with them, being accessible, being available while doing all the other things I do. But I also realized that in my early parts of my parenthood, that whenever there was that slight feeling of guilt, it was actually the most negative emotion that anyone can feel. And you don't learn very much from feeling guilty. So I very early on stopped. And I said, I have the privilege and the luxury of shaping my day and my life and my week. Not where everyone does, but I do. So I must make the most of it. And so that little struggle of guilt in the very early days has also dissipated because the structure helps me find my windows of time with my girls while being able to do the other things. So I think I'm right now in a place where there are no real struggles at this age. But I know I'm seeing it around the corner. I'm seeing technology around the corner. I'm seeing obviously just sort of hormonal changes around the corner. I'm seeing all of it come, but ages 4 and 7 seem a bit safe right now.
Now, we know that the Indian education system is very robust. It has done very well over the years. Today, world leaders or corporate leaders around the globe are all part of this education system. However, times are changing and the system may not be evolving at the rapidness of the change that we're seeing outside. So, hence, we see newer boards coming in, we see newer technology coming in. What, in your opinion, is the top two things that you find missing in the current education system here?
I'm a huge advocate, and this is where the Learning Matters experience opened my eyes. I'm a huge advocate for two things. One is play based learning in the early years, which I think India has been stripped of. The Indian school system has been stripped of play. There are few schools, few ecosystems that encourage it, but it is always considered the anomaly and not the norm. And that's worrisome because research has shown time and time again that play actually builds all executive function. And that's the executive function people and children need as they become adults and to live life. So I think that the big gap is play. And two, I think children are sent off to school way too early. I'm a big proponent of keeping your children home till they're at least 7. And by home, I don't mean, in their bedroom and their home locking doors, but in a home like environment. Big schools with thousands of students and big concrete gates and structured start times and 6-hour days is actually not serving the purpose. And by the way, it's not that I've been able to beat the system, I'm also in it. I was able to do some level of my own curation for Veda. But Avya, my younger daughter, started school like many others at 4. It should have been 3, but I pushed back at least till 4. And I did find a school that worked for them in that sense. But in an ideal world, I think these are the two big gaps in our system: is not enough play and too early, too early.
That's in the early years. But also, when you are, let's say, leading your organization, kids coming out of schools and universities, I personally feel there is a large gap between academia and industry. And children are just not ready when they finish their academic learning to actually step in to the corporate world. And there needs to be more of skill based learning, and there needs to be more of teaching them core life skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what would you say should be the two basic life skills or personality building skills that our education system should really look to build in?
Actually, very good question. I wanted to add that on in my first answer, but it's true. I think the older, given how bright children are at the age that they are, textbook and theoretical learning is actually slowly becoming of no use. And we also know that with AI and tech, I mean, you're not going to have to think very much for yourself when it comes to data and fact, and that's what textbooks do. So I think experiential learning at a very early stage would be fantastic. Internships were always considered important in your later years, just in time for you to be equipped for your job.
Correct.
What people don't realize is that internship is a little bit of real life, curated if possible for age groups, that different things can be learned in those experiential
Yes.
ecosystems at different stages. So that's a big gap. I mean, nobody talks about business building or working in a corporate environment till you are 17, 18, and by then your neural pathways are quite set. So one is experiential learning, encouraging children at the age of 10, 11, 12 to be entrepreneurs, to understand what working in an environment looks like. And two, I think financial prudence. I don't think children are taught the day to day of financial management till it's much later. And children should understand how the world goes round.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. So, at Head Start Mentorship, we would often get students who come and say, I like design. I want to do something in design. So, you ask them, okay, what in design? Beyond fashion design, which is the normal sort of design aspect, they don't know. So, I curated this 5-day program where they would go through aspects of product design, they would go through aspects of graphic design, they would go through aspects of fashion design, they would go through aspects of interior design, and they would go through aspects of fine art.
Amazing.
At the end of which, I would ask them, what of this calls to you? Some would have been able to identify, others would say, I never want to talk about design again.
Yeah. I mean, how is a child to know, an adult to know at 17, 18, 16 which line of work they are going
don't.
to? They don't. And we're setting them up for failure because the choices are becoming more and more, but the visibility around those choices is becoming less and less.
That's because exposure actually, for all the technology, Tara, is actually becoming limited.
Yeah, I agree.
Because the screen will show you what you are choosing to see. The algorithm is only going to keep showing you what you are choosing to see. And you are only choosing to see what you are aware of. And what is your awareness? It's the ecosystem around you, right? So, unless you're a family that talks about current affairs, unless you're a family that asks deep thinking, meaningful questions, that exposure is not available to
Absolutely
students.
correct. Yeah.
And that, I feel, is the biggest missing link in developing their own neural thinking and what is available outside.
100% agree.
Yeah. So I just feel that now more and more thinkers are thinking about these things. So hopefully more stuff will start to happen, which makes them more equipped for the real world.
And I also think that, your point about the thinking and the doing, uh, this rat race that we all think we're in, and we think we're going to conquer it by doing. Actually, you're not. You're going to conquer it by thinking, by conversations, by gentle exposure, by subliminal um, opportunities for children to understand different parts of the world, rather than rushing with them from pillar to post trying to build activities and stuff like that. Because you're right, conversation shape the world, right?
So I have to sit with an open calendar and ask children who are 13, 14, 15, when can you slot me 30 minutes? And I get answer, oh, but I'm busy. So I'm running a business and doing many other things. I can find that time in my window, but the children don't have
Yeah, it's
the
too
luxury.
much. It's too much.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the importance of mentors. Who in your life would you say has been, and I think I know the answer already to this question, but who in your life would you say has had maximum impact on you in terms of mentorship?
I'm a huge believer of mentorship, and I have been so privileged and grateful that I have had access to many people who have had more experience, who are far more intelligent and far more accomplished than me. And to me, that's what really makes a mentor. So I know what you were thinking, but I don't have that one mentor. I don't. And I've always worked well with many voices around me. In fact, yesterday I was saying to someone, I'm not a lone ranger. I work much better in conversation with people, in listening, in debating. So I've had many mentors, and I actually think they have come from all different parts of life and stages. Obviously, my father's presence in my life, just by watching him and seeing him take the decisions he's taken, and him owning up to some decisions have been great, some have not. What would one do differently? How would one do things differently? That in itself is a great mentorship opportunity. My husband Sahil, he's been in his own way a great mentor to me because he's very different to me in his approach. And seeing that different way of doing things itself is a learning opportunity. My board, so when I started Antara, the first thing I felt I needed was a group of advisors. Tough, tough, but really important for me. Each one of them today, I can say, has been a mentor. And like I said, in a way, even my children, right? I don't think mentor have to be older than you. It's any opportunity to look at things a different way. And then deciding on your own. You can't be so malleable that anything anyone says you float around.
Correct.
But you inform your decisions with multiple worldviews, and that's what a mentor is meant to do. So I think I've had a huge privilege and benefit of multiple mentors.
So then what I'm hearing you say is access as many viewpoints as you are able to, take as many learnings as you can, and adapt those to your own environment with your own thinking, your own rationalization, your own circumstances.
Absolutely. Create a limit. I think analysis paralysis is real for
Yeah.
everything. So create limits and say, I'm going to take 30 days to think about something. And whoever I can access in those 30 days, I will. But on the 31st day, take that decision. Because you can't also be floating and being
Yes.
indecisive. I don't believe in being indecisive. I like decisions, again, coming from that structured, slightly OCD personality. But voices are very important to develop.
Another thing that I grapple with today, our attention has become so bite sized. And we're in a world where everything seems quick. Okay. Students think success is quick, right? The younger generation is often needed to be reminded that for this one success that you see, there's hours and hours and hours of hard work and grit and determination and failure and persistence. So I want you to talk about it a little bit. Today, in a regular day, how many hours a day do you spend thinking actively about your work and actually working?
So 2 points is you're absolutely right. I think this quick win approach scares me a little bit. And I'm a millennial who works in the senior care space. I'm a bit of an anomaly. because everything I do, I at least, my personality type is to look at the long run, 50, 60 years, institution building, legacy of value system, not legacy of brick, mortar, and money, but just everything that is good has happened over many years of doing it. So I'm very much, I think like that. And I think, therefore, when I apply that to my life, I spend almost 50% of my time thinking, evolving ideas, adjusting, pulling back, pushing forward, strategizing. I'm not a here and now person, for better or for worse. I'm just not. I'm not fickle. I'm not quick in that sense. I like decision, but I like decisions with a lot of information. I like to move ahead with a lot of information. So I like you, what you've just mentioned. I'm not bite sized at all. Sometimes I wish I was. I think there's a balance to it. But I spend majority of my time going deep and figuring things and solving things and debating things and just being on the move and impulsive.
Do you think some amount of course correction of this persona we are creating, of success coming by easy, of, you know, uh, instant billionaires, and that's actually making students avoid the hard work because they all think that one day they're just going to arrive at that point?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, other than winning the lottery overnight, even if you look at the billionaires that you think are instant, it's not. If you deep dive into their stories, like you mentioned, it's far from instant. So we have to be responsible as the people with maybe more knowledge in comparison to younger people so far, to actually emote and express and discuss correct stories. Ultimately, they're going to get baptized by fire.
Correct.
We can say as much as we want. Let them get seed capital first. Go find seed capital, then build a business and see.
That's even later. First, that idea that you have, the reluctance to even put it down on paper is real.
Yeah,
But yet, success is needed instantly.
yeah.
So it's at this I with all the people that I have this conversation, because I really want to put this point across, that it's hard work, determination, knowledge building that is going to get you there.
There's always been a school of thought, right, that you learn best by seeing. Um, and I think there's a point with which we will not be able to use our words to convince future generations that that's really how things work and evolve. They're just going to have to learn it for themselves. And like I said, we have to be responsible with the information we give, and then we have to hope that they will find their own way.
So with this, I feel technology is inevitable. It's here. It's no longer a question. Um, I feel technology is giving access to a lot of deserving students that may not have had it earlier. Technology is also making minds a little bit lazy. Where do you see technology in the next 5 years with regard to education?
So this conversation I started 2 years ago. My girls get to do the green school in South Africa for a month, and the founder of that school was just telling me, Chat GPT. That was the first time I had come across any of that, and she said to me, she said, we can't even do exams anymore. Because everybody has devices. Yes, you can turn Wi-Fi off, you can do all of that, and we can't give written assignments to take back home, because what is the purpose of it? And therefore, that got me thinking that, really, to our point earlier, that the education system has to rely on experiential learning, so that the child has access to his own knowledge rather than relying on data and facts that come. So, one, technology is going to disrupt examinations completely and testing. Technology is going to put less pressure, in a good way, on a child to remember things that are fairly futile. Uh, and I don't think that your brain necessarily needs to absorb all of that information to be successful in the future. And three, you will just be an international citizen. There will be no polarization anymore of what necessarily you get access to by living in the country that you do.
Correct.
So your worldview will become far stronger in decision making than just the society that you are restrained to. And therefore, the school system has to be able to fuel that inquisition and curiosity, because it's no longer going to be about Indian history, for example, or just your own language. It's going to be about so much more than that. So it can be used positively. I mean, the social media and all of that is a whole other, we can spend hours on it separately. But I think that there's enough happening in the tech world for these boundaries to be created to be used for positive in the education space.
And I think technology is a good thing if used correctly. Okay. As someone who is visionary and someone who is setting up really systems for the future, what do you think should be some smart guidelines that parents should use with regard to technology at home?
There's so much that's been said about this, um, that I may sound like I'm repeating that thought, but I do feel strongly about it. I mean, I do think the later you can wait for your child to get exposed at least to social media should be almost a rule that we as parents should have. There should be a sort of understanding or an MOU amongst us parents about it, because like we know, one parent does it, all the other children start pushing back. So social media specifically should be pushed out till much later. I mean, the latest research says not even before 18, because their minds are not developed enough to even deal with what information comes out there. So that would be one guardrail that I would hope and pray that we all as a society can put into place. Two, I genuinely think that um, very calibrated hours with technology is very important. To be able to give your child a phone, even if there's no social media on it, there's just too much stimulation from this device. And our brains were never ever, maybe 30, 40 years from now, genetically the brains will start changing, but our brain is not equipped to handle that much stimulus, even if it's not social media, different apps, hopping from one app to the other, sounds, light, all of this stuff. So I would also say push out, or be very constrained with the number of hours your child is on tech. I don't think there's a third thing, because if these two things are, and have that level of advocacy amongst your peer group to all be on the same page.
That's really true. Again, this is going back to my point of parents are so scared to parent today
Yes?
that
Yeah.
they don't want to be the odd one out by laying down these rules. So that thing about peer group kind of accepting it as a collective is is needed to make this happen.
And the thing is, I think there's so much excitement about being popular, and being in, and again, it all boils down to social media, right? Our brains have started getting wired to feel such a sense of gratification and validation by being like everybody else, that to me that's creates so much dissonance. Because, and maybe I've had again the luxury of being rooted in who I am and feeling very clear and safe with what I stand for, that I feel extremely empowered to be able to say no, or to say everyone is doing this, but I'm going to choose to do it this way. I actually think of it as a badge of honor. We have to give our children the same sense of confidence to say, you don't have to be like the others. It's hard. It's very, very hard to do, but one can only dream and see.
No, I feel if as a parent you have inculcated that sense of self which is strong, then it's easier for the children to stand up for themselves.
Yeah, and role model it.
Absolutely.
Right? They learn best through
Absolutely.
role modeling.
So, a lot of the younger students and their parents will come to me and say, but what is it that we can do? And I say, 30 minutes of reading. And that 30 minutes of reading cannot be you on your phone and telling the child to open a book. So, role modeling is actually so critical because, Tara, whether we like it or not, our children are constantly imbibing what they are seeing us do.
And this is not new.
This is not new.
And neither is it rocket science. In our earliest texts in Indian culture and wisdom, we've talked about Sangat and Sangha, and why. Sangat is important. Why? Because of the role modeling and learning from one another and choosing your Sangat wisely. All of these things are true thousands of years later. We've just forgotten them and gotten distracted by all the bright lights. But you're absolutely right. Role modeling is extremely important to do.
So, as a parent, apart from academics, what would be a couple of things that you would, as a parent, but also as an educator, like parents to follow?
When you said apart from academics, I've been slowly, my thought has been going in a different direction about academics. In fact, I had lunch with a friend a few days ago, and something happened, and we talked about placements. And I said, I'm not even thinking about that. I said, my children don't even need to go to college if they decide not to. And again, I realized that came from a sense of privilege to say that, at the end of the day, maybe one would create a platform for them to create and to do something, because that's not an option for me. What is not an option for me is my children not waking up every day with a deep sense of purpose. And that deep sense of purpose doesn't have to be to change the world, but in their own little world, a deep sense of commitment and purpose to something. That is a non negotiable for me even today. And how do you inculcate it? I don't know. Again, role model conversations, seeing that the world is a better place if you yourself individually have a deep sense of purpose. And I don't link academics to that anymore, in my head at least. Maybe I will fall into the peer pressure in the next 10 years.
So, I feel academics has its own role to play. It teaches them structure, it teaches them discipline, it teaches them a lot of stuff also. So, it can't be no academics, it can't be all academics. But again, it's that balance that you set.
So I think academics fuels curiosity, and without curiosity, no individual can thrive. So curiosity and fueling that curiosity in any way. So to your question about what are the few things parents could do outside of academics is, one, I've been studying a lot about sports and the importance of sports. I lack that. I grew up playing no sport, and I regret it hugely. And I think that more and more, when we look at the importance of sport, not necessarily competitive sport, but sport being a part of your life, your thinking, your natural physical and emotional being is in a sporting environment, I think is extremely important. Do reading. I don't think of reading as academics. I literally think of reading as a life skill, without which I don't think people will cope. And that comes back to my point about curiosity, that a child or a human being without curiosity is actually quite a defunct person. And curiosity can only be fueled, frankly, by reading. And or reading or listening or conversing. Yeah, because some people can't absorb information through text, right? I think as parents, they need to have more fun with their children. I don't see parents having fun with their kids. Fun is a fancy holiday, buying them stuff, going to the mall. I don't see parents just dancing aimlessly in a home at any age. I'm not talking early years now. I just don't see the being together and finding ways of having fun that doesn't include all the curation around them. And maybe I'm also a victim to it. I'm thinking about it as I'm saying it, but I think I'm a little bit better off because my babies are young, and I'm trying to think of this space. But I think parents need to have a little more fun with their kids.
I think fun, as the years go by, becomes different. Fun could be a deep, meaningful conversation. Fun could be doing an art class together. Fun could be going and shooting the basketball on a Sunday morning. But it's just take that time out of regular routine to bond with your child. Is what I recommend to the parents and students I work with. One must do that a child should keep in their skill set to succeed in today's new world.
I think to build the skill to hold a conversation. Easier said than done, but I really think it is a very, very critical skill to have. To have a conversation, articulate your thoughts, listen and be able to repeat back, and be concise. I think the art of conversation is something I think is very important for children to develop.
I could not agree more. And I take it one step further and I'd say communication. All kinds of communication. So, whether it's written communication, so the students who are so excited about using AI, you get what you ask for. And you can only ask for if your writing skills are good, if you have critical thinking, if you have knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
So use it as an aid rather than an answer. And how you present yourself, how you communicate, how you collaborate with others is all part of communication, which is sort of a non-negotiable skill. So I'd say to all the parents and students watching, that's your one takeaway from this conversation. Please learn to be effective communicators. And with that, Tara, I'm going to bring this conversation to a close. Thank you so much. It's been insightful, it's been honest, and it's been a truly learning conversation for me.
Thank you. I've had so much fun having this chat.
Thank you.